Thank you for having me and for inviting me. I should start by saying that everything I'm about to say is my own personal view. Nothing I say represents the views of the United States government. They are my views as a scholar and as an American citizen. So let me start by saying that. So I'm here to talk about Russian disinformation. And I want to talk first about this word, disinformation, and what I think the goals of this flood of disinformation is about, because I think it's become much more active in recent years, much more visible, much greater volume. When I say disinformation, I don't mean a lie necessarily or propaganda that's meant to establish a particular line. It's worse than that. It's a flood of inaccurate information. It's meant to fill all of the information space available on television, on the internet, in newspapers, with stories that are confusing, that they sound true, but they are difficult to track down. If you are future political scientists or social scientists or scholars, you will face many of these stories in trying to do your research, and you will find that they are almost impossible to track down. If you're a future journalist, I was talking to young journalists in Prague, you will find it impossible to source these stories. They violate every rule of logic and science and sourcing, because they're not meant to inform you. They are meant to disinform you. And it's not just to convince you of a particular line. In the old days, I can say that, I'm old enough to say in the old days, during the Cold War, for example, propaganda was in some ways a very simple matter. The United States said something, the Soviet Union said something, our system is better, your system is bad. In the Soviet Union, everybody is happy. In the United States, everybody's happier, and we would have this argument back and forth. That's not what's happening now. That was easy enough to counter, because you could provide examples. You could marshal facts. This is different. This is trying to put so many stories of such low quality so quickly into the information space that it's not to convince you that Russia is good or America's bad. It's to paralyze your ability to think at all. It's to get you to a point of hopelessness where you simply step back and say, I don't know what's true, I don't know what's false, and I don't care. Because it's impossible. I can never figure it out. And the goal is to get you to the point where you'll accept anything as the truth. It's really meant, and this is the major point I want to make, the goal here is to corrode the trust of people in open societies. It's to corrode their trust in their own public institutions. It's to get you to believe that everybody is lying to you about everything. It's meant to break down trust, not just between you and your government, but between you and your neighbor, between you and your journalists, between you and your teachers, your scholars. It's meant to break down the social trust that is at the basis of every liberal society by confusing you and creating such a sense of hopeless inability to determine the truth that you simply withdraw from the public sphere. Because I would argue, and again, this is my personal view, I think the goal here is to get, especially younger people like you, to simply withdraw from public life, to say, the world is full of conspiracies, the world is full of lies, the world is full of people doing terrible things, and I don't know what's true or not, and so I'm going to kind of pull up and defend myself, and I'll only care about my family, maybe my close friends, maybe my dog or cat. I have a cat. You know, I know, I don't know, dog people always give me that look. They say, oh, he has a cat. But only to care about yourself and to not participate. Because I think when authoritarian regimes like Russia are trying to compete with open societies like the United States, like the Czech Republic, like Western Europe, what they really want is for you not to believe them. They know that's not possible. I don't think they really hope, like the old Soviet guys used to, that you're going to say, oh, boy, I bet things are really better over there. You're not going to believe that. What they prefer is that you are simply paralyzed, that you can't make any decisions at all, that you will not engage in any kind of moral reasoning, that you will not be able to reach any kind of decision about participating in civic life, that you will simply withdraw, that you will say, well, everybody's bad, nobody's good, nothing matters. And I think that's the real goal of this. And I think that's more dangerous than anything, because it's clever. I'm old enough to remember the old days of Cold War propaganda. It seems very simple now. This is a much more clever form of attack. It's to take the essential truth and create so many stories so fast that instead of opposing them one-on-one to say, this is the truth, this is the other, it's to simply drown it in so many stories so fast that the truth just disappears after a while. And that you lose your ability to reach critical judgments about how to determine when something in your world is true or false. And it's meant to breed apathy. It's meant to breed disengagement. It's meant to breed cynicism. And it's meant to make you doubt your own society and your own institutions. Now, let me say a couple of things on a personal note. This is not simply me saying, well, you know, hi, good morning, I'm an American, the Russians are bad. It's not the case. I have been arguing for 25 years that first of all of my work is completely transparent. It's online. If any of you would like to follow me on Twitter or read everything I've ever written or visit my website, everything I've ever done my whole career is online. So I am no mystery. Actually, somebody came up to me this morning and said, oh, I saw you last night, and now I've looked up everything. I know where you worked back in the 1990s when I taught at Dartmouth. So if you want to know more about me, it's all out there. And for 25 years, I've been arguing for better relations between the United States, NATO, and Russia. I have been pushing very hard, even though I grew up during the Cold War. I was pushing very hard for many years to say we have to reach out to the Russians, we have to have a cooperative relationship with them. I'm sorry that we are now in this phase of history where that seems impossible, at least for the short term. And whether I have a great affection for Russia. I have friends there. I have family from Russia. I'm actually Orthodox. I'm an Orthodox Christian. I have no quarrel with the people of Russia, but I have plenty of problems with the Russian government. And I cannot pretend that what's happening is not happening, because it is. This campaign of disinformation is significant, it's sustained, and it's powerful. And you need to be informed about it. It's also a personal issue to me, because for the first time in my life, there's a direct attack from a foreign power on my political system, on my election system. There's a direct Russian attack on the American election system happening right now in my presidential election. And it's having an effect. And the goal in the United States of this campaign is the same goal that disinformation here in Europe has. It's to make Americans doubt their institutions. It's to make Americans believe that everything that's happening is a lie and that everything is rigged. Unfortunately, one of our presidential candidates keeps using that word. I don't think that's going to have the same effect in the United States, because one thing I think that people outside the United States are not aware of is that elections in the United States, the actual voting, is controlled locally. You can't rig a national election in the United States because every town counts its own votes from town to town to town. I know this because in my small town in Massachusetts, I'm originally from the state of Massachusetts, my mother was on the town council. I counted votes as part of a group. I was an observer when my mother ran, that I was there to watch the votes being counted. It's very hard to falsify or to claim that an election's rigged because you have to turn to your neighbor and say, you're my neighbor, you falsified the election. But the fact that Americans are even talking about it and thinking that it's possible shows you what a powerful effect that level of disinformation has on a country of 320 million people. And I've never seen anything like it in my life, I have to be honest. So it's not just an issue that I think is important to open societies and to societies based on liberal values, but it's also a personal issue to me as well. So let's talk more about this. Let's talk about a couple of ways this is done. I was talking with some of your professors last night, and there's a word that the Americans often use called astroturfing, and this is going to take a moment of explanation. The Americans in the 1970s invented fake grass because we wanted to play sports all year round, and we didn't want it to snow on our grass. So we created entire football fields made of plastic that looks like real grass. This was called astroturf. And that led to an expression called astroturfing, where companies or political campaigns or governments try to lay down a lie on top of the real grass to make it look like people already believe it. It's kind of a pun on grassroots. So instead of looking to see what people actually believe, you lay down a big layer of astroturf where you pretend that the thing you want people to believe is something people already believe. You do this by setting up fake websites. You do it by planting news stories. You create fake polls to say, and you use expressions like, well, a lot of people say, or everybody knows. That's how you engage in astroturfing. And it happens not just in politics. I should be honest and tell you here that businesses do this as well. Businesses, for example, try to create websites or fake news stories to generate buzz, to use a marketing term, to generate publicity, to say things like, this vitamin cures blindness, or will make you pretty. And a lot of people know this, and there are studies, and it's out there, and everybody's buying it. That's astroturfing. It's creating the illusion of popularity of an idea that nobody really believes yet. On the web, this is done by setting up fake websites and then trying to push their content out through social media. I gave you an example of a political one here within the United States. And you can find hundreds of these. You can search anywhere for them. This one was the first one that came up when I started to search. The Pentagon says Hillary Clinton should be arrested. Really? Clinton busted lying again. Hillary Clinton campaign empties her toilet on a busy street is actually what that third story says. And the goal is to make it seem like this is something that everybody knows already, and to put it out on a website and repeat it enough times so that it looks like real grass until you touch it, and then you find out it's astroturf, that it's plastic. How do you create a story? Well, I'll give you an example in a moment. And we'll walk through one of these fake stories just to give you an example. But the basic pattern is always this. I shouldn't say always. The basic pattern is usually the same. Find a website or create a website that you can plant a story on. You're young, you know this. You all use the internet. Creating a website's easy. Any of us in here with $10 could set up a website that says, BrnoNuclearSecrets.com. Right? We could start our own astroturfing campaign tomorrow if we wanted to, by setting up a website. The next trick is to get people on social media, particularly on Twitter, to start pushing the story. Hashtag, hashtag Brno moon rockets. Are there rockets in Brno? Well, I guess there are. Look at all the hashtags. Everybody believes it. It's obviously true. And what's interesting is, in a lot of these campaigns, once the trending begins, once the hashtag is repeated enough times, the people behind the campaign, the people engaged in this kind of activity, will start erasing the tweets so that you can't track backward to see how the trending began. Because if you could do that, you'd realize that it's the same 15 or 20 or 30 accounts just generating this over and over again. So they're very clever about it. You get something trending, and then you start erasing the tweets that made it trend. At this point, the Russians, who of course know what's going on in the background, the Russian media doesn't step forward and say, well, we're just reporting a story. We heard a rumor. We saw it on a website. It's not us. We're just helping. We're being helpful. We're being like the media. We're reporting. Of course, what they're reporting on is something they already know is out there. At that point, the Western media, who are, pretty busy most of the time, when the story will become loud enough, there will be somebody in the Western media to say, what is this rumor? Why are we hearing this? And then they'll do a story. Well, now we've gone from a planted story through a website, onto social media, back through the Russian media, back onto social media, and then into the Western media. And at that point, you'll often see one more report that says, well, we're just saying what the Western media are saying. It's very clever. It's getting Western journalists and European journalists and North American journalists to repeat something that's not true because they're curious about where it came from. It's sort of like saying, there is a giant gorilla loose in Brno. And someone says, wait, is there a giant gorilla loose? Oh, so you admit it, there is. Well, I didn't say that, I'm just asking what you said. No, you're admitting, you said gorilla. No, you said gorilla. Well, now what are we talking about? We're talking about gorillas in Brno. None of it's true, but because it got thrown out there, and it's going back and forth like this, like a game of ping pong, the word now sticks in everybody's head.